Okay, so when we're talking about like something like a supernatural experience, right? So when someone says like, "Oh, I saw something," right? But then it's like it disappears, or like maybe it appears randomly. Like in the Bible, we have a story of when, s well, up Paul, before he was an apostle, he was on the road to Damascus, and this was a guy who was like he was working for the Romans, and he was persecuting thousands of Christians. Like he had already persecuted hundreds, thousands, and sent them to be killed. Like in the arena, eaten by lions and stuff. Like pretty gnarly stuff. But he ends up becoming Apostle Paul, who's like a significant figure in Christianity. And his story starts when he's on the road to Damascus in Syria, and on his way to go find Christians, and a light appeared, like just appeared out of nowhere, and it sent him off his horse, and then he was like, "Who are you?" And then God started speaking to him, and and essentially told him like, "I'm Jesus, who you are persecuting," and then tells him to get up and go into the city, and he'll be told what he must do. Well, how? So when we hear a story like that, a lot of people would be like, "That's metaphorical. That's metaphorical, right?" Like it's not, how could something like that happen? And when you break it down logically, you know, I would say, yeah, it seems improbable, because you would have to be saying something is appearing out of nothing. It's just appearing out of thin air. And so it's like appearing in front of you, then disappearing, right? So how is that possible? Well, if you have an understanding of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, you could logically explain that in a way that's understandable and realistic by saying that instead of it appearing out of nothing, it actually grew in size from a microscopic size that's invisible to the naked eye, but actually grew in scale to appear in front of Paul, or in front of anyone, like any supernatural story, and to grow. And then how it disappears is that it shrinks back. But the reason I say the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio is because the golden ratio is how you would keep the proportions. Like in the Magic School Bus, say a student had a water bottle, and this is before they shrunk. But then now they've shrunk, and the kid's still holding the water bottle, but the water bottle's like, it's still proportionate to the size of the kid. He's not going to be like, "Oh, my water bottle's too small." It's going to be like, "No, it's the same size water bottle, but we have all shrunk collectively in scale." And so the only way that that's possible is by following the golden ratio through a Fibonacci sequence. And so, in the Bible, it says that God is omniscient and omnipresent. He's everywhere at once, and he can appear, he can disappear, all this stuff. And my theory of it is that they're microscopic, so tiny you would need a microscope, because God refers to himself as the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, right? The first and the last. And what I'm thinking he's saying is, if you see like Horton Hears a Who, is that if you got a microscope and looked down, things would break into billions and billions of cells forever. It's endless. And so, like microscopic organism, but that's made up of cells. Then those cells made up of cells. Then those are made up of cells, right? And so, you know, eventually it gets so small to the Planck, right? Which it's, the smallest possible length to measure a unit by is the Planck length. And so if you did the opposite and got that microscope pointed at the sky, you would see that it goes on forever too, like a telescope. And you would see that it goes on forever. There's no end. But God, referring to himself as the beginning and the end, he's the Alpha and the Omega. is that he's both places at once. So he could jump from here to here and then here to here whenever he wants because he's outside of it. Because he's outside of it. And so my theory is that when they appear to you, it's because they were already there. And that's why they say they're invisible. Is because you can't see them to the naked eye. You could even get the most high powered telescope, microscope, whatever you want in the earth, and you still wouldn't be able to see them until they choose to be seen. And so this is, how do you prove something like that, right? But this is one of those when, you receive the, I want to say education, but, an understanding of cymatics and all these different, like advanced sciences, they're out there, like for sure. But when you grasp an understanding of these things, the spiritual aspect actually folds in perfectly with the scientific approach, with the understandings that we have through science. And, I think it's just something to think about that, in order for them to be there and they hear you and all this stuff anywhere you go, would be that they're like microscopic. You can't see them, but they see you. And then same thing is like they can scale up through the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio so that when the angel appears to you, it's not going to be like his head is too big for his shoulders or something like that. It's perfectly to scale. It doesn't matter where he appears to an ant or to a giant. It's still, they're going to recognize that person and be like, oh, that's Jesus. And so like he'll lower himself to be able to interact in our environment. Because humility would be like, I'm no better than these things. I'm no better than these things, but God is better. But he's the one who showed us how to be humble and how to interact like that. And so I think it's an interesting discussion. I'm going to try to get some AI programs to run something like that, so to see what it would look like if something was to appear, like to grow in proportion to the golden ratio, maybe like a image of an angel or something, and then to shrink down to see what it would look like for it to disappear. And then based on, because I don't think humans have ever seen something like that before. And so I wonder how our brain would register that and what it would look like. Do they spin? Do they just shrink? Like what happens? And I wonder if, that could simulate what it would be like for you to have, like how Mary had a angel appear to her. Just boop, it's there. And then it's gone. So it's something to think about.